Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Raymond Yeung. Here are tonight's top stories. Health Chief Lo Chung-mao urges better coordination to facilitate cross-border organ donation. Ukraine commences a long-anticipated counteroffensive against Russia. And Manchester City complete a historic treble after winning the elusive Champions League. The Health Secretary has doubled down on a cross-border organ donation scheme. Speaking at an event in Shanghai, Lo Chung-mao hinted that Hong Kong patients could benefit from hundreds of organs, which went to waste on the mainland every year. Janice Low reports.
On the third and final day of his duty visit to Shanghai, the health minister officiated at the ceremony for China's annual Organ Donation Day. In his keynote speech, Lo Chung-mao noted that even with the country's massive population, around 1,000 organs could not find their way to a matching recipient each year due to various reasons. His comments were published on the government's news portal, but have since been removed. Lo added that over 2,600 Hong Kong patients are currently in line for a transplant, but only dozens of donors are recorded annually. In this sense, a cross-border organ donation scheme will give patients from both sides of the border a fighting chance to survive, he said. He emphasized the mutual transfer mechanism will only kick in if a local recipient cannot be located. That means organs in Hong Kong will only make their way north if they are unsuitable for SAR patients, and vice versa. Also at the event was Huang Jiefu, who chairs the China National Organ Donation and Transplantation Committee. He claimed that the recent spate of opt-outs from Hong Kong's organ donation register was caused by some individuals distorting the virtue of devotion, and condemned such fraudulent acts. 4 people were arrested last week for allegedly disrupting the register. Police said they submitted opt-out requests by filling in the personal information of government officials and celebrities, which were leaked online. Some of the doxed victims had already passed away. Janice Low, HKIBC.
The chairman of the European Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong expressed concern over the effectiveness of the government's global talent recruitment drive. In an exclusive interview with HKIBC, Inaki Yamate said a favorable working environment is essential.
I think it's important to understand that some of the things that we used to have for granted in Hong Kong probably have, if not disappeared, have deteriorated or changed in the last years. For example, we claim that the use of English needs to be back to Hong Kong to a logical level to be able to attract people, especially in the service industry. So I think that when we look into what are the new jobs that are basically offered in Hong Kong, most of them require Chinese, and Cantonese, and English. If you want to attract people from abroad, that's not going to be possible because Cantonese and Chinese are very difficult to get if you are basically educated abroad, right? The government is working already now.
He noted authorities are only eyeing top-tier graduates and white-collar workers, even as companies in the city are in need of staff of different backgrounds. He added it would be very unrealistic to hope that all job vacancies can be filled by people from the mainland. You can watch the rest of the interview on this week's All About Money after the news. One of the giant rubber ducks, which became deflated yesterday, was taken to a shipyard in Qingyi for repairs. The giant inflatable installation was loaded onto a barge at Victoria Harbour in the early hours of this morning. The exhibition's organizers said it will return to Admiralty after checks are completed, adding contingency plans will be put in place to deal with inclement weather. Even without its companion, the other duck still drew a large crowd to the central promenade today. Some dedicated duck watchers even got onto small boats to get a closer look and better selfies. Workers deflated one of the ducts yesterday after the high temperature caused the air inside to expand, leaving it at risk of bursting. Honduras opened its embassy in Beijing today, almost 3 months after the Central American nation established relations with China. Foreign Minister Chen Gang and his Honduran counterpart Eduardo Enrique Reina graced the occasion. Back in March, Honduras endorsed the One China policy and ended its decades-long friendship with Taiwan. The opening coincides with the state visit by the country's president, Xiomara Castro, to China. Castro will meet President Xi Jinping during her stay in Beijing. Turning overseas, a long-anticipated counteroffensive against Russia has begun, according to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. But the year-long conflict has taken an ugly turn. A humanitarian crisis is brewing after a dam was blown up near the city of Kherson, causing massive floods downstream. Sachin Kadri reports.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has confirmed that a counteroffensive against Russia has begun, but did not divulge further details about the operation. The Ukrainian military claimed to have regained territory in the city of Bakhmut, while inflicting casualties on their Russian counterparts. Ukraine will need whatever help they can get, including a Russian paramilitary group fighting against Moscow. The group, which claimed to have launched attacks within the Russian border, held a funeral in Kiev for a unit commander who died in combat. But Ukrainian officials did not attend the service and have not publicly endorsed the group's goals. In an unannounced visit to Kiev, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau pledged further support for the war effort by offering an extra $375 million of military aid. This is on top of the $6 billion Canada already dished out since the conflict started more than a year ago. Trudeau also gave an additional $7 million for humanitarian assistance to help flood victims after the Novakovka Dam near the city of Kherson was destroyed last week. The United Nations warned of grave consequences, saying the disaster would have a cascading effect on food supplies worldwide.
The ability of that part of Ukraine, the breadbasket, as I mentioned, to produce the grain that the world depends on is going to be massively reduced. And that sounds like it's a poor statement of the reality. And that will mean less grain being exported to the global south, higher prices for grain around the world, and the consequence of that is that the people who need humanitarian assistance to survive are going to be less able to get the food they need to do so. So this is a viral problem.
More than 700,000 civilians have been affected by the floods as Russia and Ukraine continue to point fingers at each other for blowing up the dam. Sachin Kadri, HKIBC.
In the United States, a mathematics professor who was sentenced to life imprisonment for a series of bomb attacks in an 18-year span has died in a prison cell aged 81. Ted Kaczynski, better known as the Unabomber, an acronym made up of the words university, airline, and bombing, was serving 8 life sentences. Described as a twisted genius, the Harvard graduate orchestrated 16 bombings between 1978 and 1995, which killed 3 people and injured 23 others. Many of them were science or engineer professors or students. Kaczynski later published a manifesto on the Washington Post, explaining his motives and pessimistic views of modern society. He was eventually arrested in a primitive cabin in Montana. Despite being diagnosed as schizophrenic, he refused to plead insanity and accepted all the charges. A U.S. city in the state of Connecticut has agreed to pay $45 million to Randy Cox, who was left partially paralyzed while in police custody. The mayor of New Haven insisted, apart from the payout, a series of reforms have been adopted by the police department.
It's important to note that of that $45 million, the city is fortunate to have a $30 million insurance policy. The $15 million above that will be covered by the city of New Haven. From day one, Chief Jacobson and I have been very clear that we wanted to respond very proactively to make sure that what happened to Randy never ever happens again.
Cox was without a seatbelt when he was placed inside a police van following his arrest last year. The van then came to an abrupt stop, sending the 36-year-old, who was handcuffed at the time, headfirst into a metal partition. He suffered spinal injuries and was paralyzed from the chest down. Cox tried for help on the floor, but the driver only pulled up minutes later to check on him. Another officer at the police station accused him of drinking too much and ordered him to sit up. 5 officers now face criminal charges, with 2 of them since dismissed from the force.
What we have done is ensured accountability, changed policies in the police department. Just several days ago, 2 of the officers, after an extensive internal affairs investigation, were fired. The police department has undergone training on duty to intervene and other trainings to make sure that when this type of scenario or similar types of scenarios might happen, the officers have the tools and are equipped to respond in a way that makes sure that we're treating people appropriately, humanely, getting people medical attention immediately.
On to the weather now. It will be mainly cloudy with sunny intervals tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 28 and 32 degrees. Hot and humid with a few showers over the next couple of days. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Sunday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Raymond Yeung. Thanks for watching. Good night.